Serious, what is it like to have children you don't want? I know someone who was diagnosed with MS and had 5 kids because each pregnancy her MS got better. She was a terrible mother. No involvement with her kids. Imagine growing up and at some point you figure out you were a medical treatment your mother was using to not have MS episodes. My mom just forgot we existed and had another baby to keep her happy. I have 10 siblings. I have kids and I wanted them. But I was an unwanted kid. My mom and non-bio dad married when I was young. He raised me, but I never felt love from him at all. He married her to get her out of a bad situation. I thought he didn't want kids, but when I was about 5/6, my sister was born. He wanted kids. He just didn't want me. I saw how different he was with her, and his other kids they had later. Those who have kids that you don't want, they're aware on some level. My girlfriend had a 2-year-old when I met her. He's 5 now. I didn't plan to have kids, but I love her. I'm pretty much used to it. I teach him stuff and he's attached to my hip when he's here, joint custody with the father, but ideally I'd have preferred to not have a kid around. I can deal though. He can be a little shithead sometimes LMAO. Also it's weird disciplining someone else's kid so I'm just getting there. I can see the betrayal in his eyes. I'm supposed to be like the fun uncle, getting onto him is weird. Never really said that out loud. This is liberating. It set the tone for the rest of my life. One of those hindsight is 2020 things. I honestly believe if I'd never had a kid, particularly as young and alone as I was in a very socially backwards area, I'd have made a lot more of myself. I know that could be taken as self-rationalization for lack of trying and failures. But I also know how I felt, how I have never bonded with my kid, and how both our lives could have been a lot better had I either waited to have her, or let another couple adopt her like I wanted but was forced out of the choice. It's like having some guests at your house that never get around to leave for years, but you must take care of them to avoid getting into trouble and judged by others. I was conceived to replace a baby boy that died. My mom was so disappointed I was a girl, she forgot my name for a while, and now I have 2 middle names. I had a brother growing up who was favored by both my parents, but he really was amazing. He was my favorite too. He died 5 years ago in a motorcycle wreck, and I'm the least favorite. My mom admitted this freely. Also I am the last remaining child. Also, I don't care that my parents are disappointed that I was the one that survived. I've made myself who I want to be. I only talk to my dad occasionally, and my mom became an alcoholic, because 2 of her kids died. I don't talk to her. Shrug. My life is separated from theirs, and I encourage other people to cut off the cancerous people, even if it's your parents. It's liberating. Being an unloved child is the greatest pain and destructive force a human being can endure. If you don't want a child, use birth control. If you get pregnant anyway, give the child up to an adoptive parent who wants a child to love. I helped raise my ex's 4 years old until she was about 6 or 7. I never got used to it. Yes, I loved her very much and would do anything for her. I just couldn't deal with the crying and lack of sleep and being disobedient. Every time I wanted to do something like play a game, go to the bathroom or have a conversation with her mom, she always butted in. Also, she was an only child and always wanted me to play dolls with her or something. I just couldn't handle someone needing my attention like that all the time. Call me selfish. I went from being single for years to being daddy. I just realized I can't do it. Now this is a taboo subject. People want to say anal sex is taboo, or drugs, or that sort of thing. No. This is the kind of topic that is actually taboo in our culture. Good question. Op. I am that kid that wasn't wanted. I'm old now, but it really shaped some huge insecurities in me that I have tried to figure out all my life. I made it, despite being unwanted. If you never had a mother, it is very hard to be a mother. Raised by people to whom you were an unwanted burden, an imposition, the child who was always in the way, a person like that, like me, does not know how to love. You know you are supposed to, you see it on TV, in the movies, you read about it in books, but somehow it never happens. If you were born and raised in a place and time where there was no birth control, abortion was illegal and sexual abuse was as common as flies on a piece of rotten meat, a lot of children were not wanted. And then the child became an adult who did not know how to love anything. This is a common enough story, no one likes to hear it, so it does not get told. That's probably why kids like me weren't protected from predators. Being a wanted, not wanting a kid doesn't inspire a whole lot of loyalty or love. Sad. Be smart about parenthood, please. I think my mom regrets having me. We have a weird relationship. She doesn't like me as a person and wasn't engaged with me as a child, but she did all the stuff she should do, and beyond. She just doesn't like me as a person. She's okay with my older brothers. It's made me very convinced that if you don't want children, you shouldn't have them. It also makes me uneasy when parents judge other parents for not wanting their kids. There's not a good solution, but as an adult, I wish she had just raised me and not tried to fake liking me as a person through my 20s. I think this is a conversation that more women, especially, should have. You are close to being burnt at the stake if you confess that actually if you could turn back the clock, you wouldn't have children. I feel that these conversations may stop perpetuating this idea that if you're a woman you will automatically adore your children too. You have more options than just having children. Women do also go through things such as PND, and maybe others talking about it won't make them feel so guilty and alienated. Not fun. I don't recommend it. You can always tell when in the grocery store or in public, which parents are douchebags. And it makes me mad to see them treat their children that way. As a person who grew up insanely poor in a drug household, I find it painful to see other children having to deal with the same situation. And this needs to be addressed and brought into the light more than it has. I know what it's like to be the unwanted kid. It leaves you with severe abandonment issues and problems allowing people to get close to you. My sister got pregnant by a total piece of shit she knew for 3 months. Nephew born, he split. Loves her son, but not enough to take care of him. She moved in with my parents and passed all parenting duties to them. It's obvious she resents him. She screams at him over little things. Everyone is miserable. Please for the love of God get abortions if you didn't plan for kids. It ruins everyone's life. Girl I worked with had a 5-year plan. Get a designer man, have a massive wedding, travel to fancy hotels and have a baby. She managed it all except the baby. 2 years of IVF later and still no baby. After a long adoption process they get a 6-month-old. 3 months later they give him back and divorce. She realized that she had only wanted a baby because that what people did and that meant she was successful. She had never thought about what having a baby meant and what it would do to her perfect life. The husband couldn't live with what she had decided, so left. At least the baby went to a couple who did want him eventually, instead of staying with her. Unwanted kids are a tragedy for everybody involved, including society. I don't have any data to back this up, but I'd be willing to bet every dime I will ever make that prisons aren't filled with people whose emotionally and mentally healthy parents specifically wanted them. Not wanting a kid isn't the same as being a bad parent. So many people talking about having bad parents. Every reply in this thread, I was the child that wasn't wanted, that wasn't the question. I was a planned, wanted child, and I have had a, mostly, happy life with parents who love me and who I love. But when talking about abortion with my mum, she said that if she'd known how badly I would suffer, I have fairly hefty depression, she wouldn't have had me. That was a hell of a thing to process. My kids are wanted by me, but not by their other parent. It's been over a year since any contact. I'm watching them grow in a world that isn't made for them in many ways. They both have disabilities, and for their own parent to abandon them is the saddest thing I've ever seen. My older kiddo is autistic, which is almost a blessing because older kiddo never had a decent connection with the other parent, and is very black and white with thinking. Younger kiddo doesn't remember the other parent, but isn't autistic, congenital physical disabilities, and I'm sure will ask harder questions than my autistic kiddo has. I'm an OB nurse. See it a lot. Also have a few co-workers in this situation. It's definitely hard being a spectator. One of my co-workers has a granddaughter no one wants and is 2 years old with PTSD due to her shitty living situation. When her 13-year-old son got his girlfriend pregnant and my co-worker started talking about it, I naively asked, recommended abortion, and now she doesn't talk to me unless I'm the only one around she can vent to. I just don't get it. This kid's life is down the shitter already and she's 2. Being a single mum with a kid stuck with me, it just feels like an obligation to me. I do love my kid for sure. But I don't really feel the bond, or the wishy-washy mum-son relationship, connection that the other parents describe. Sometimes I envy those parents. Maybe because the pregnancy was unplanned, or maybe because at how terrible it was coming home to an empty apartment with all of his things done, then suddenly I have to take care of this little man with his face on it. I do try my best to provide everything for him, getting a better job, buy all the things he needs and wants. But yeah, an obligation, a responsibility. Those kids grow up to be unable to grow attachment, got no self-esteem, had all their dreams crushed and end up like soulless zombies trying to find something or someone that can bring a bit of happiness in a shitty life. One of my childhood friends has a daughter that's about 6 or 7 now. The friend recently confided to me that the kid was a result of a failed Plan B, and by the time she realized that, her window of opportunity for abortion had closed. The friend lives with her parents, she's 30, a struggling massage therapist especially since the pandemic, and makes it very clear that she resents her child. I believe the grandparents have done most of the raising of her kid. It makes me so sad to witness, because this friend used to be so free-spirited and this kid is dragging her down mentally and emotionally. I accidentally got pregnant when I was 24 because I didn't take my birth control correctly. I gave her to a loving couple, and last I knew she was doing great. That pregnancy was honestly one of the worst things I've put myself through, and every now and then I wonder what things would be like if I had either not gotten pregnant, or had an abortion. Got a girl pregnant, but she didn't tell me until after she gave birth and gave her up for adoption. I was relieved at first, but it started to fuck me up to know that my own flesh and blood was being raised by another family. I know shush is better off, but it still gets to me. I was depressed about it for a long time but am slowly getting over it. I just wish I had the chance to be a father to my kid. I don't want her to grow up wondering why her birth parents didn't want her. I hope her adopted family tells her that it wasn't that I didn't want her, and it was simply the best chance for her to have a great life. Grace, baby, daddy loves you. Lol, this turned into neglected Redditors. What is your story? Real quick. You hope they change. You spend more and more time with them in hopes of them being like the kids who aren't assholes. The good kids resent you because you're rewarding bad behavior. In the end, the bad kid just uses you because they know they're your failure and they can manipulate you into doing anything for them. The good kids hate you for being weak and presumably loving the bad kid more than him for no reason. Just a guess. Lonely. I don't want kids, I never particularly liked them. I'm not mean to them when I'm forced to interact or anything like that. Just don't have whatever paternal instinct everyone else seems to have where they think babies are cute, so I'm just awkward. Seeing how my cousin is with his surprise kids, even after several years he still is pretty unhappy about not having his own life and it's hard to watch. My parents pressure me about having kids and that, when they're yours it'll be different, but I would never want to risk that. Come on pro-life people. Answer this one. It's made for you. I never wanted to be a mom. No part of me has ever been maternal in any way. I have a kid that I love more than anyone in the world. But I'm ready for her to become a young adult. I enjoy being alone and doing what I want, when I want. She is extremely attached to me and it's unbearable most of the time. But again, I love her and don't regret my decision to have her. My perspective is a bit different. I am a kid who wasn't wanted. Well, not a kid anymore, 37. I was told I was adopted. I was showed pictures of 2 people who were my bio parents. My adopted father used me like a human punching bag. His wife hated me because he adopted me before he married her. My childhood was a long montage of anger and fear. If I said I didn't feel well, I was told I was lying. I got pneumonia, and had to almost die before I was taken to hospital. If you don't want a kid, don't take it out on the fucking kid. I'm still dealing with trauma and PTSD. Yeah, the system is loaded with kids. And that's fucking awful, but sometimes it's better for the kid. It's exactly the same as having a kid you want. You do everything you can to make the life they live better. I remember having to stop at my dad's work, the receptionist leading me back to his office, and her gushing about what a great guy he is and what a diligent worker to put in so much overtime. Just listening to this woman fail to realize she was describing an absent father, and a mean one at that. My ex told me she couldn't get pregnant and we had 2 kids, recently divorced. We moved to be close to her parents, 4,000 miles from my home, and now I have to stay here, a place I don't want to be. I love my kids and I would never say I don't want them, or hold it against them, but I left my home, friends and family with the agreement that we would move to my home when they are school age. I miss my home but I would miss my babies far more. Humans shouldn't reproduce. Awful. I had my son at 18. I wish I'd never had him. He's all grown up now, but resents me for not giving him the childhood he wanted. I couldn't afford the childhood he wanted. I was working over 80 hours a week to keep food on the table. I was convinced to have and raise my son by my family and ex-husband. There are days when I break down thinking of the life I should have had. I was supposed to go to college. I was supposed to move out of my hometown, to carve out a place for myself in the world. Instead, I became a mom. And I still hate it. Regretful Parents is a great subreddit for reading stories from parents who made a mistake by having kids. And #X200B. The only thing is that you should be respectful and don't participate, only lurk without downvoting their experiences because they're sensitive and it's a safe space for them. My husband and I just got married and I've been wavering about my child-free decision because I'm almost 30. I've been wondering whether I could tolerate a baby. This thread just reaffirmed my decision. Thank you all for being honest. This question makes me think of the guy who posted about having pressured his ex into having the baby when she found out she was pregnant. She agreed, but only if she could give up all parental rights and, at time of posting, pays more than the required child support. He wanted to know if there was any way he could legally oblige her to take care of the child. Like, this lady got pregnant, didn't want to have a child, and agreed to carry the pregnancy to term only if she had nothing to do with the baby besides paying child support. Boo. 1.5 years later, the guy realized being a single father was hard and wanted to know if he had any way to legally force the bio mom to physically help raising their son. I don't remember where I saw the post, might have been legal advice. Edit, words. No one ever replies with first-hand experience to these topics. It's always, not me, but my best friend's mom's dog's previous owner had a similar experience. Like, dude, just don't answer, you're just clogging the top responses from being what the op actually asked for. Please normalize this, it's not wrong to regret having children. It doesn't make you a bad parent. It's a big decision some of us make while we're still technically children. The grand idea that life is supposed to be marriage and kids needs to stop. For those of you out there, your brain doesn't stop developing until you're 25. Don't get married and don't have kids until you're grown. You weren't put on this earth to be a housewife and pop kids out unless that's what you want to do. Do you boo-boo? Worse than not having children and wishing you had. You can't take it back. Personally, I'd rather not have kids and sometimes wish I had than have kids and ever wish I hadn't. As a species, we've progressed too far and become too capable of raising every kid to adulthood for how strong our biological programming forces us to want them in the first place, and we're outgrowing our environment because of it. Other species will eat their young, have massive infant mortality rates, and are subject to predation, but we just keep filling up our terrarium with no plan or inclination to actually feed all of the people we make. Some of us even still crank out kids as if they've got to man an entire farm and act as if it isn't selfish to every other living being on this planet. Ex-wife stopped taking contraception with telling me and with knowing that I did not feel ready for kids. Son is 12 now. I love him to pieces and hate her to death. Don't know where the moral of this story is, why MMV probably, as each case is so different.